Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being covered in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined this week by Thad Greenson, news editor, and Jennifer Fumiko Cahill, arts and features editor at the North Coast Journal. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. Thad, we had to say farewell to one of your colleagues.
Yeah, we're very, very sad to be saying goodbye to Iridian. She's just been a fabulous member of our team for some years now, but trying to be happy for her, trying to put on a brave face and smile and put one foot in front of the other.
I know we are going to cover
openly hostile.
Yeah. Really sad. Really sad. I was going to say, I know we're going to cover an article by her today, one of the articles that she's prepared. But before that, Thad, why don't you tell us what is on the cover of this week's North Coast Journal?
Yeah, this week we have a really localized story, but from Cal Matters, the nonpartisan nonprofit newsroom in Sacramento, dedicated to covering state policy and politics. And so the story dives into the difficulties small rural hospitals, hey, we have a few of those, are facing in meeting the state's seismic retrofitting and earthquake preparedness standards that were passed into law almost 30 years ago now.
It's interesting. The first few words of the article are actually Gerald Phelps Community Hospital in Garberville is one of the smallest in the country.
Yeah, which I knew it was small, obviously, but I didn't realize until reading Cal Matters coverage that it is. I think it's one of the one of the 9 smallest or something like that. But it is kind of the poster child for this issue of Gerald Phelps and other similar hospitals, including Mad River Community Hospital, whose CEO, Doug Shaw, wrote an opinion piece that we ran along with this story. But they really feel like the state has taken a one-size-fits-all approach to hospital compliance and really targeted kind of the larger, medical institutions in the state to force them to come into compliance. And then these smaller hospitals kind of got swept up in the same mandate, which they feel like is unfair and ultimately will either lead to hospital closures and a lack of care in rural communities, or hospitals, prioritizing equipment upgrades over patient care.
And which is obviously a real concern, which we appreciate that the article kind of dives into the details and sort of reveals the variety of considerations here. But what I was going to say is that earlier is that the article references, and you referenced in your intro, that there's 2 standards here. One is that the buildings survive an earthquake, and the other is that they stay functional, providing services during an earthquake. Can you differentiate a little bit for us the level of success versus the level of pushback at achieving those standards that we're sort of witnessing that this article reveals?
Yeah, so the first standard, as you said, was just to keep buildings upright after a major earthquake, and that was the deadline for that was initially way back in 2008, but it was then pushed back 12 years and to 2020. And most hospitals at this point have met that standard. Folks might remember that St. Joe's, or what's now Providence St. Joe's, which was then just St. Joe's, had a big capital campaign and got some federal funds to build its new tower, and part of that was to come in compliance with these seismic deadlines. The next deadline, which is coming due in 2030, requires that these hospitals that all of their buildings remain operational for 3 days independently after a major quake. And so that means, access to power supplies and stuff like that. And I think the story says 62% of hospitals in the state have not yet met that standard. And the smaller ones are very nervous about whether they'll be able to.
And what are some of the things that are being said by the hospitals about why this deadline should be extended that you know they're having. You know, what are some of the roadblocks to achieving this compliance?
I mean, it's. I think the largest one is that it's an unfunded mandate, and so the state is not making any funds available to hospitals to do this, in some cases really expensive work to meet these compliance deadlines, and hospitals are saying that either means that they are going to prioritize this over other things that contribute directly to patient care. Or they are going to, raise prices that ultimately get passed on to consumers and make healthcare more expensive. And so, kind of what the hospital associations are saying is that everybody wants to meet this goal. There's nobody who's kind of like, we don't really need to remain operational after a big earthquake. It doesn't seem that important. Everybody, recognizes that this is a laudable goal and something that they want to be able to do. It's just the roadmap to getting there and the timeline to getting there. And so a lot, some of the smaller systems are saying that, again, it will impact patient care, or they just aren't going to be able to afford to do it and are going to have to be forced to close rather than face, state fines, which would result in, instead of a rural area having, potentially impacted care following a major quake, but then just not having a hospital at all, which, ask anybody in Garberville or Redway if that's a scenario they want to face, and I'm sure you're going to hear no.
Gotcha. And in the article, it says that they need like $50 million for a new building in Garberville. Mm-hmm. That's what it's going to take for compliance. But yet it also says that there's a one case-by-case basis extensions can be applied for in certain, that's sort of the path that's been used in the past, but that the mm-hmm. governor's office doesn't really want to approve that. They'd rather have a sort of a universal approach. So it's almost like the different parties are playing, chicken as it gets closer to the point where they have to decide if there's going to be public funding. Any last mm-hmm. thoughts at all about the prospects for, this to be resolved anytime soon?
Not on the statewide level. I think you're absolutely right that they are a bit an impasse and there is a game of chicken going on. I think for, the good news for Gerald Phelps and Garberville is that, it has done this public fundraising campaign that's been very successful. They've raised over $1 million at this point that will be used to leverage other construction funds. And so, despite this kind of looming threat, it seems like that Gerald Phelps really is on a good path toward building a new facility, which would be, great news for everybody in Southern Humboldt.
Fantastic. There's more in the article, and we'll continue to follow this as it develops. Thanks for covering this. This is really important to our community.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else have you got going on in the news beat this week?
Yeah, so folks who have been, longtime listeners, readers, viewers will recall that Iridian Casadas, who you mentioned is leaving us soon. She's been covering implementation of the state's organic waste diversion bill, Senate Bill 1883, which is really a climate change bill. The premise of the bill is that a huge percentage of the state's CO2 emissions come from organic waste that is rotting away in landfills when it could be used, repurposed to compost or to for other organic materials. And so the state passed 1883 mandating that kind of all counties, cities come up with plans to mandate curbside organic waste collection, and then that they have basically a local closed loop that either takes that organic waste and turns it into mulch and stuff like that, and compost, or biofuels and other things like that. And so, as Iridian has reported for some time now, the county and its 7 cities have been working to try to come into compliance with this mandate. And she just has an update on kind of that ongoing story, which basically says we're not going to be there for some years, that there needs to be an infrastructure build out. And Recology Humboldt is working on kind of creating a drop-off station for organic waste, much like they have for recycling, but we're some years out from that becoming a reality. And so the county and municipalities are kind of working with the state to extend deadlines and stuff. But one thing I was really happy to see included in the story, which I think is really good, useful information for anybody out there who, is concerned about their organic waste, whether it be lawn trimmings or table scraps, further contributing to climate change, is that there are currently some local options, some local services where for a fee, but a pretty nominal fee, folks can arrange to have that organic waste either picked up from their home or to drop it off someplace, and where it will be put to good use and not end up emitting methane in a landfill.
Yeah, so similar to what we talk about pretty much every week. There's a lot more in the article. If people want to hear more or see more specifics about that coordination that's going to happen between the county and the municipalities and private sector, there's also a lot of details in there about how you could start to do your own compliance now. There are options available, including if you live in Arcata, someone will come by on a bicycle and pick up your compost if you're concerned about your carbon footprint. Yeah,
I love that.
That's really pretty cool. So I know there's a lot more in there, and we'll continue to follow it as we get closer to some degree of compliance and these programs roll out.
Yep.
But you've got another thing for the news coverage this week that I think we'd be remiss if we didn't cover, hot off the presses. Why don't you tell us about that one?
Yeah, so after the print edition of the journal went out the door last night, we posted a story about a developing controversy involving First District Supervisor Rex Bohn, who, while acting as the auctioneer at the Eureka Chamber of Commerce's annual 2023 awards gala and fundraiser on Friday night, was auctioning off a dinner for 8 donated by a local woman-owned restaurant. And as he was kind of trying to drum up bids for the auction item, said, according to numerous sources that we talked to who were there, that if the bidding got high enough, the owners would probably serve dinner topless, which, according to the people we talked to, kind of elicited immediately uncomfortable laughs and groans and a rather mortified reaction from the business owner in question, who, again, was not only at the celebration of local businesses, but had donated a valuable auction item to raise funds for the chamber. So this was brought up at the Board of Supervisors meeting yesterday by First, at the very outset of the meeting, Supervisor Bohn read an apology. He did not specify what he was apologizing for. It candidly appeared a bit like a hostage statement. He appeared very put off to be doing this. He mentioned in the statement how many auctions he has volunteered his time to contribute to. And said that it was brought to his attention that he said something inappropriate and was apologizing for it. Wasn't specified exactly what he said or what harm was caused by what he said. And then much later in the meeting, while the board was discussing a agenda item concerning an initiative to foster a more inclusive workplace culture and a more positive workplace culture in county government, recently seated 4th District Supervisor Natalie Arroyo said that she felt she had to address it. She actually did not specify exactly what Supervisor Bohn had said, but read a letter from one of her constituents who was very distraught about Rex's comment and the impact of it and what it signifies. And so she kind of read that statement and said that she hopes there will be kind of a more constructive conversation going forward.
So thank you for framing that issue. One of the elements of that letter that was read was that, a quote here, this comment was a classic expression of hostile sexism. And like you said, went on to just say that's not funny, it's not a glitch. Disparaging humor is a classic strategy to delegitimize, devalue, dehumanize a member of another group. So there's a lot more in there. You can see the whole statement, the video recording of the meeting online. But so just generally speaking, there's comments from Supervisor Arroyo that there's going to be further action in theory. There's going to be further work to be done. Do you have any comments on that element of the story?
Well, I guess I don't exactly know what Supervisor Arroyo has in mind or what outcome she's hoping for. I think that the context in which she said it was that she said she understands that Supervisor Bohn had reached out directly to some of the people involved, which I presume means the business owner and possibly the chamber. And she was hoping, there'd be something more constructive coming of that. I think that in my mind, I mean, what's really important in these instances is to, A, call out harmful behavior, but then B, really to talk about why it's harmful. And so, I mean, I would hope that, there would be some recognition from Supervisor Bohn, not just that somebody felt what he said was inappropriate, but that what he said actually caused real harm, not just to the business owner it was said about, but to, I would presume at least half the room being filled with women who rightfully would take much offense and question how somebody who would say such things views them and values them.
I'm sorry, my eye rolled back so far in my head, I think it's stuck. But this is not the first time that Rex Bohn has been auctioneering and said something absolutely unacceptable. You may recall that he made a really, struggling not to swear, a really racist comment about Mexican people when he was auctioning off a Mexican dinner. This is not new for him. It's not unexpected. I don't know why anyone books him for this stuff. Frankly, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to guess that Thad and David are not familiar with this. And, I'm glad for you. But the feeling of when someone says something like this to you, particularly in public, it is hard to describe how visceral it is. I don't know what it was like for this restaurant owner, but I know that when it has happened to me and to people I know, to honestly, like every woman I know, it is visceral. And by that, I mean physical. You suddenly are hyper aware of your body and you feel not safe, not okay, not like people are looking at your face. And it's also demeaning. And it's like a reminder to say, no matter how far you've come, no matter how much you've built up a business and like blood, sweat, and tears into a business to make it come far enough to where you can donate a dinner for 8, which, by the way, you don't make money off of. That's goodwill. You can come that far and it doesn't matter. You will still be demeaned and somebody will make a sex worker joke about you. Although, hey, shout out to sex workers. It's also very telling that, that to him is a mortifying thing, right? And it's very upsetting, not only, for half the room being women, but consider what the service industry has gone through in the last few years. People working in restaurants have taken the brunt of a lot of abuse. And frankly, anybody who survived and is still in business this far does not need this garbage.
I really appreciate you sharing that point of view, Jen, and I think it's really important. One distinction that I would add in, and I think kind of elevates this instance of Supervisor Bohn making inappropriate comments, is that the prior instance, certainly not condoning it or excusing it, was totally inexcusable, but was a comment that was meant to be in private that was overheard by other people. Whereas this was meant to be said in front of a room full of people who were all listening about somebody who was sitting there listening, which adds, I believe, not just a layer of insensitivity, but really, cruelty in this instance.
Thank you both for these thoughtful reflections on this unfortunate incident. I do want to point people to the full text of Layla Roberts' letter that Supervisor Arroyo read, because it's in the article, so you guys can everybody can check it out for themselves. It's a teaching moment for at least some people, and it's a refresher for the rest, that these are still really important challenges we face in how people speak and think and work together and collaborate and grow. There's a lot of work still left to be done.
Definitely.
On that note, thanks again, Thad, for news coverage. And let's pivot over to Jen. What else is going on with you, Jen, on the arts and features beat?
In happier restaurant news, look, nobody gets publicly humiliated in this one. I would like to introduce you, if you haven't already been introduced, to El Chipotle over on, what street is it? It's on Crescent Way in Arcata. Have you been, Dave?
Not yet.
You must go. For two reasons. I know you love a sandwich.
Do.
And, they have their list of tortas, which are all stellar tortas. But then if you flip away from the torta section and go into the specialties, you will find a secret hidden magic torta that is the Pambazo, which is a great name, by the way. And it's a name that derives from the name of the bread. And it's a kind of originally a peasant bread, and it's a white roll. It's not particularly crusty, but it gets a dip into some lovely red sauce, which is like tangy and delightful, and adds a little something to it when it's grilled on the flat top there. It gets sort of pressed and grilled, not exactly like a panini, but it develops a kind of a crustiness. And it looks like a hot piece of lava sitting on the table. It's not particularly hot, but this version of it, co-owner Oscar Anguiano's Mexico City version of this sandwich, which is like an iconic sandwich, has chicken tinga and queso fresco inside of it, which is fantastic, and a little bit of lettuce. I'm told that there is another variety, kind of the Pambazo Classic, which has chorizo and potatoes. Oh, man. If anyone knows where to find this, please don't keep it a secret. Contact me immediately. My DMs are open. And also, they make a chile relleno. Are you a chile relleno person?
I like it, yeah.
Yes. I mentioned in the article that there are some people who have to order the chile relleno whenever they see it on the menu because they must know. And I respect that mission. This one is like, if I wasn't so hungry, I could have put my head down on it and gone to sleep. It's like a little fat pillow. And there's lovely homemade beans, and the rice is just so flavorful. The rice is, you know what I mean? When you go to a Mexican restaurant that's not so hot and the rice is kind of throwaway, it's a little bit sad. It's a waste on your plate. This is like what you want. This is like you're at someone's house and they've made you this lovely meal. And magically, again, a feat I cannot accomplish at home, the lovely eggy batter that the pepper is dipped into stays clinging to the pepper. Teach me your magical secrets. You know what? Don't. I never want to know. I just want to be amazed. But it's a really lovely roasted pepper stuffed with cheese and dipped and fried in a really lovely light sauce. And I strongly recommend it. It's just so happy making.
Right.
And I know we've been curious about curry leaf. Everybody keeps asking me, have you been to curry leaf yet? Should I have a curry leaf? Well, here we go. Another thing that I cannot accomplish at home is something called wok hei. Are you familiar with this term, wok hei?
No.
So wok hei is wok breath, which is essentially the flavor that you get from a super high heat wok. You know when you see like a chef in a Chinese restaurant where the flames are like going up to the ceiling and you're like, that looks dangerous.
Totally.
That is partly what produces wok hei, having a really intense heat and a crazy hot wok. The whole thing with stir frying is you're keeping things moving around to cook them, but you're also, avoiding burning them because it is hot. So when you have a kitchen, like an industrial kitchen situation, this is not like your regular gas stove or your electric at home, you can achieve this taste. You can maybe get a little bit at home. You can maybe do it on an open flame, but not like this. And it really makes a difference when you're eating things like Thad's favorite, chow fun. Beef chow fun over at Curry Leaf is fantastic. Strong recommend. It's very it's not overpoweringly salty. It really allows the flavor of all of the ingredients to come through. Nothing is drowned. The beef is so soft, just lovely. Another thing I won't achieve at home. Also the Indian mee goreng noodles, which are more of a thick yellow egg noodle. And they're, a round sort of spaghetti-like noodle, but thick. And it's cooked with, scrambled egg, and you can get a protein with it. But honestly, I don't think it's needed. It's got some crushed peanuts and a very hearty sauce and a little squeeze of lime on it to balance out that richness. And it's actually a Malaysian dish, but it's called Indian mee goreng because in Malaysia, there's something like a 25% population of ethnic Chinese living in Malaysia, and something like just under 10% Indian living in Malaysia, a lot of them Muslim Indians. And so this is one of those dishes that came into being with an Indian community living in Malaysia. So it's a Malaysian-Indian fusion dish, and it's really great. So there are lots of great things to explore. It's a very broad Pan-Asian menu, but the fried noodle game, that's a thing that's really hard to do at home and really delightful here.
So we are blessed with a new place to go in our community. Thank you for biting the bullet, going down there, checking it out, and giving us some recommendations. You're making everybody hungry, I'm sure. Yeah, we appreciate it. Actually, the word goes out. People, it's like the ripple effect. So it's really cool. That's about all the time we have. So thanks again, Jen.
Thank you.
Jen, unfortunately, that's all we have this week. But North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick one up, stay informed. Also available online 24/7, so you can check them out anytime. Jen, take care till next week. Everybody out there, thanks for listening. We'll catch up with you again next week. Bye, guys.